Well, there we have it. Bags A to D. D? Yep. A to D complete. So, quick recap. Installed the super cool bell crank steering system. Basically, a plastic version of what J Concepts makes. Installed the front end. There's new carbon fiber front tower with extra holes, or maybe it's the same one as before, but it has extra holes. You've got your captured hinge pins and king pins. We now have a trailing axle, so the axle is trailing behind the kingpin. That's what it means when they say trailing axle. It's trailing behind. So as opposed to the kingpin going straight through the axle in the original RC10 and pretty much every version of RC10 until this one, now it's trailing, which allows us to use a modern 12 millimeter hex axle screw going in from the back. My kit came with the extended screws or the longer screws. Some bump steering washers already pre-installed, so they must have figured that out early on in the testing. So that's fine. The kit builds with 2 of those washers. To the back, built the world famous stealth transmission. Hands down the best 3-gear transmission of that golden age of racing. Certainly compared to the 6-gear, it was like comparing a Saturn V rocket to a space shuttle. This, unlike the other re-release kits, has a factory team slipper clutch with the octagon pads. Octalock pads rather. So that's it. That's all installed, and the tower is installed. It's definitely a different tower, and the tower is set up for a B6 style rear wing mount, so that's awesome. Next, we're going to go on to bag E, which is the installation of the rear arms, and then it's the axles and rear hubs. Then we'll do the linkage, then the shocks. And when you're building shocks, you're in the home stretch. So the manual is way better than anything else I've built so far this year from Associated that was a re-release. And it follows the same kind of sequence of steps as building a B6 or a B7. So far, really impressed. Bag E's complete, like the other bags. Super quick. You do need to pay attention to one thing here. It doesn't, I mean, I'm just going too fast. Sometimes they give you the little exclamation mark on the manual. See that little red dot right there? When it came time to building the CVAs, there is a pin, the CVA pin, that holds the CVA bone into the CVA axle, and it's Loctited in there, and that's all good. Am I not permitted to speak? Huh? Hi. He laid there sleeping while I built bag E, and as soon as I start yakking, he's like, no, stop. Okay, so there's that pin, and then there's another pin that goes through the axle itself to hold your rear factory team 12 millimeter hex on. The manual calls it a roll pin. It is not a roll pin, and it's just simply a straight steel pin, and there's a little set screw in there, a little bolt that you clamp. Just don't go, too many ugga-duggas on that, because I've broken them off in the past. Just snug it up so that it holds in place. I mean, the wheel and the nut is going to hold that hex against the pin. That's just to stop it from falling off the car while you're working on it with the wheels off. So don't go too silly on the tightness on that. All that to say, I confused my pins. I put the roll pin that goes through the axle to hold the hex on through the CVA. And the CVA pin is longer than the 12 millimeter hex pin. There are 2 different holes in your CVA, and you got to look very, very closely at this drawing to figure out that the CVA pin goes in the hole closest to the threads, not to the back of the CVA. You really got to look close. That is a place where they should put a little exclamation mark to draw your attention to it. But if you slow down, take your time, look at the drawing, you'll be fine. And you'll quickly know if you got it wrong, because you can't get your 12mm factory team hex over the pin that you put through the axle, because it simply is too long and the hex won't fit. So all that, even with the boo-boo, bag E probably took less than 10 minutes. Super straightforward. And it's time to move on to bag F, which is the turnbuckles. And then, man, like this thing, if I wasn't stopping, I would have this thing absolutely built in under 3 hours. I'm almost positive. So we'll be right back. Bag F, all done. Super easy. The rear camber links, front camber links, steering, and the adjustable link for the steering rack that goes between the two bell cranks. It's like a revised, updated OG system. It's pretty good. It doesn't have all the adjustability of the B6.4 or the B7, but it works. It's simple. Keep it simple, silly. Like every other step on this build so far, super quick. Just nothing. And the manual, no mistakes. Some of the other manuals, the measurements were wrong. There's no mistakes. The manual continues to be crystal clear. And I mean, it's even telling you that when you use these measurements, you're going to get 0 front toe minus 2 degree front camber and 3 degree rear camber. So you know right off the bat what you're getting if you want to start your setup sheet. So it's time to move on to the shocks. I already started, got the pistons installed on the shafts. Again, factory team car. Those aren't factory team shock shafts. Those are the cheap tin ones. You got the Kashima bodies, but you don't have the hard chrome shafts. What are we doing? Is it factory team? Kinda. It's factory team light. You got the Octalock slipper, but the white garbage pads. Come on. Jeez, man. Anyway, so that's a little gripe. It's factory team light, because not all the parts included are actually factory team. There's parts included that you will often... There's parts included that you often upgrade to factory team, so, you know. But it's going together really quickly, and the manual's great. So let's keep going. Let's get the shocks built. Well, all right. It's time to talk about the shocks. It should come as no surprise to anyone. This was the most time-consuming step of the entire build so far. But there's some reasons for that. I made some changes along the way. First, we'll talk about what's standard. So for the factory team kit, where we've got some 13mm shocks, Kashima bodies, not factory team shafts, but anyway, the build on these is straightforward. There's no limiters inside or outside on the shock shaft. It's the kit calls for you to build the front shocks with the 0 eyelet, the plus 5mm spring cap, and a 21mm stroke. I like all that. It's kind of, you know, very specific. Something I do to my shock collars, if you look at the front here, because I like to keep track of everything, I file them. See a little shiny mark right there? I actually take a file and I file a groove in my collar so that I can count my rotations on the collar. So that is one full rotation. And then I want to make sure that it's not only about counting, it's about making sure that I have an equal amount of turns on each shock. So if I can keep track on one, I can keep track on the other. So if I lower this one too, I lower this one too. Is it necessary? Meh, it doesn't hurt anything, and it makes me feel like I'm paying attention to my setup. I'm sure that the springs are preloaded with the exact same amount of turns on each collar. All right, that's the front, straightforward. If you have been watching people's builds or following the groups or reading the forums, you'll know that there's a lot of hullabaloo about the droop on this car, the up travel, all right, how far up the rear suspension arms go, and how far down they go. And one of the things that I've heard just a few minutes ago, shout out to Larry, is that the shock collar is not there. The shock tower is not the right size for these shocks. The kit calls for the bottom eyelet on the rear shock to be the +4mm. Normally it seems a little excessive, right? And then it calls for 4mm of external limiters, and that is to prevent too much up travel. And the reason why we're trying to prevent too much up travel is because if you look in here, right here, the diff outdrive, too much up travel, and the CVA bone shaft is contacting the outdrive of the diff, and we're seeing pictures all over the interwebs of chipped outdrive. Spencer Rifkin even made a post about this and recommended adding limiters to the exterior of the shock to prevent upstroke. Apparently that's not quite enough. Again, shout out to Larry. I asked the question, how many limiters are people using on the Facebook Factory Team RC10 group? And he actually, I didn't even look at the replies yet. He sent me a PM. This is a guy I've dealt with for vintage stuff in the past. And he said to go back to the B6.3 shock eyelets and find the absolute longest one, or even use one of the turnbuckle ball cups that comes in the kit. This is the one for the steering, and that is basically the same as this shock eyelet that I found. So rather than rob the ones from the kit, I think those are the ones for the steering link between the servo and the bell cranks. So I built them, one as per the kit and one as per Larry's recommendations for modification. I'm gonna install them now, and we'll have a look at up travel and droop. We'll be able to compare both builds. We'll put one on the right, one on the left, and by the way, the stroke is the same. Larry recommended 27.5. I went with the kit 28.5 to start. So let's get these together, let's get them on the car, and let's see what kind of droop and upstroke or up travel we have with the kit setup and the suggested modification. Shocks are installed, and we're going to take some measurements to see up travel and droop. If we just look at the arms here, we'll see that the arm, which is, you know, the left arm of the car, if we turn it around, it's the left. It is hanging lower below the chassis. More droop, more down travel. This one is a little higher. It's higher up and the angle's not as bad. So if we measure the droop, which is the distance between the bottom shock bolt and the center of the top shock bolt, let's have a look here and see how much of a difference, because obviously we're going to get a difference. .61, and that is on the shock that I went with the modification suggestion from Joe with the extra long eyelet on the bottom and only 1 millimeter of external limiter on the shaft. 90.61 millimeters, or just over 3.5 inches. Now we'll check the kit setup. exactly 3.6 millimeters, 91.46. I need those numbers again. The math isn't mathing. Kit setup, there we go. Kit setup 88.54. 88.54. The modified setup with the longer shock eyelet, corner that's 94. Now, what we're really, well, it's nice to have the droop, but also is the, I need a pointer, is the CVA shaft or dog bone hitting the diff out drive. We're going to start with the modification. Nope. These would have to flex quite a bit to contact that out drive. I mean, there is flex. If I push up in the corner of the arm here, there's flex, but no contact. We go kit setup. Much harder to see because the Octalock spur's in the way. Yep, still contacts. So 4 millimeters of external shims as per the kit doesn't cut it. You are still going to have the CVA shaft hit the out drive. You're still going to get some possible damage in shipping. So, not that I doubted Larry, but I wanted to just do the exercise. So now I know. If you really want to avoid that binding and you want to get some droop, you're going to go with a longer shock eyelet. The +4 is not long enough. So I will quickly pop the bottom off of this shock, remove all the spacers but one, and go with the long eyelet. And Larry had made his stroke 27.5. I might do that too. I might reduce it to maybe 28. So, but I'm not contacting as far as I can tell even with flex. So let's get that shock sorted out and then move on to bag H.